probably the issue. That's probably why they still smell.
No.
But but I've been letting them like air out for the past 3 days, and they probably should be thrown off.
So I'm a bit of a romantic. I get that from my mom. And overly optimistic. That's from my dad. If something's on the side of the road, my wife calls it garbage. But I see it as potential. Something to bring back to its former glory. And I think that can't be too hard. Just a few hours of work and it'll be as good as new. But I'm always wrong. And this bike was no different. This is a 1996 Lemond Tourmalet. I got this bike a few months after I graduated college because my first bike was stolen. It was a really nice specialized bike that my uncle gave me as a hand-me-down. I didn't have a car and it was the best way to get around the city. Like I said, I'm an optimist, but at that time I was also young and naive, and I left it unlocked outside of work. And at the end of the day, it was gone. So without a bike, I had no way to get to work. A friend of mine told me about this used bike salesman in Southie, right next to one of our favorite bars. So I went to him, looked at his lot filled with rusted bikes with flat tires, and this Lemond was the only one that was rideable off the lot. He wanted $300 for it, but I talked him down to $100 since the front brakes didn't work and the shifters didn't either. And I've kind of left it like that, fixing little things with duct tape and bubble gum, until now where I said enough is enough and I need to give this thing a proper tune-up.
It's like I can take off the wheels and I can take off the pedals, and then it's like just trying to break it down to the frame, like all these wires and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. I just don't know. I'm not gonna know how to put it back together. Oh God.
The first step of making this a new used bike is disassembly, and that was incredibly overwhelming because I've never done much more than fixing a flat tire on a bike before.
No, that's almost dead. See, this is the stuff that I wanted to learn, like how it works. Like the wire from the shifter goes in here, and then when you tighten it, it like shifts out, which would move this thing, which moves the gears up, the chain up and down the gears. But it's like, that's what I didn't know, is that the wire connects to this, and there's a spring in here, which like moves that. I was talking to a coworker, and I told him I wanted to like learn how to fix bikes because I wanted to like understand like simple mechanics, and he's like, I would rather try to fix up a car than fix up a bike. Yeah, he's like a biker, and he's like, cars are easier than bikes, and I was like, well, that's comforting.
Oh, that's tough to hear.
Yeah. How am I getting the chain off?
the problems I was trying to fix was with the shifters. I know now the issue was just the cables were old and loose, but at the time, I thought it had something to do with the internal mechanisms of the shifter, so I took it apart to see a bunch of springs and gears, and it was so complicated. I ended up stretching out one of the springs, and now the front shifters don't work, and instead of 3 gears on the front, I just had to make it a single gear.
Oh, no. Feel very good.
Not good.
I'll fix that later.
The painting is where I started feeling comfortable again. The aesthetic that I was going for was New England heritage, deep blues, off-whites, brown leathers, something that was timeless. It had history, but it will always look good. I was at a work dinner a few months ago with one of our suppliers, and one of the salesmen told me he's into bikes. So I told him about this project that I'm working on, and apparently he's very into bikes because he used to work for Trek in the early 90s and actually helped start the Lemond brand. So I always like knowing what I'm working on and asked him to give me a brief history lesson. And this is what he told me. Greg Lemond was an American cyclist in the 80s and 90s and was very successful in the European circuit. Americans were not treated well abroad because cycling was mostly a European sport, but he fought through a ton of adversity and became extremely successful. In the early 90s, Trek had a mountain biking brand and wanted to balance out their portfolio with a road bike, and they had Lemond be the face of that brand. But that partnership with Trek didn't last too long because Lemond was pretty vocal about his opinions of Lance Armstrong. And since Lance rode for Trek, they couldn't have infighting within the same family. So they got rid of Lemond.
Yeah, that'll do.
Since the disassembly was so overwhelming, I was preparing myself for the worst for the reassembly. But it wasn't as bad as I thought. building a bike for the first time was like building a Lego set without instructions. Meaning every piece had a place to go, but I didn't know exactly where or when to put it there. And that sounds hard to understand, but a lot of the times for the projects that I do, I have to make the patterns or I have to make the templates to build these things myself. At least with this project, all of the parts had a place to go, and I didn't need to make a workflow to put it together. I just had to figure out which parts went where. So honestly, it wasn't as bad as I thought. When I first started this project, the goal was to take this quote-unquote garbage, fix it up, save it from the landfill, save a few extra bucks by not buying a new bike, and learn something about bike mechanics. But it turns out I could have bought a brand new bike for less money that I spent on refurbishing this, but it was all worth it because, yeah, I got to learn new things about bike mechanics, but I also got to learn who Greg Lemond was and the genesis of his brand. And most importantly, I got to save the memories that I made with this bike previously and make more. And to me, that's priceless.